This is the campaign diary for episode 3, entitled Moles in Meadville. Our Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition playing of the greatest role playing game in the world. Um, when we last left our adventurers, they were in the agrarian country called the Dual Duchy, in a small town called Meadville, where they had spent a considerable amount of time. Now, in a previous adventure, they were offered three tasks, three possible jobs: checking on a local wizard, which they completed. The second job was to help out a local farmers controlling a local Ankheg population, and third, patrolling the woods to the east of Meadville for threats. Having completed the Meadville work, they went on to this population management. They went to a farm maybe 3 or 4 miles southwest of Meadville, and they were asked to call the local population of Ankegs. And as they were, discussing this possibility and what an Ankheg is, they thought for a short time that Ankegs were like moles, and they're kind of right that they tunnel, but they were, it turns out, incredibly wrong. It turns out an Ankheg is a very large 12 to 14-foot burrowing beast. The party started going into its hole. A druid tried to talk with it, and battle ensued. It was rough, but our brave group of adventurers eventually did defeat two of these Ankhegs, destroyed the nest, and got paid. But as the party was settling up with the farmers, they could see a caravan on the horizon going from west to east, approaching Meadville. When they returned to town, they saw that this caravan had set up tents in the southern parts of the town, but they also did go to the local shopkeeper and took scavenged Ankheg shells and were having them fashioned into a shield, and it was going to take about a week to make that happen. The party then sought out the leader of this caravan they saw entering Meadville. And who they found was this gentleman, Amandran. He's the CEO of Acquisitions Incorporated. In our world, this would be running into Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, just sort of randomly in a rural area. As being the head of Acquisitions Incorporated, this is one of the biggest adventuring guilds in Dungeons and Dragons, and he decided to offer our intrepid heroes employment, a chance to join Acquisitions Incorporated. There was a long, involved negotiation session between Omandran and our heroes, but at the end they came to a semi-agreement, I think is a good choice of words. What they agreed to is that the party gets some access to Acquisitions Incorporated. This is a multinational conglomerate. It's got different branches which do different things. And they would have access to some of these things, such as their stores, their supply chain, and magical sundries, ingredients, perhaps spells, magical items, etc. The party, however, did retain the right of refusal and a morality clause. They did leave themselves a good number of outs when it comes to contracts. One of the big things they insisted upon is not wearing any kind of uniforms. A lot of the Acquisitions Incorporated people were wearing uniforms and medallions and hats and cloaks and boots, and this was a party point. Now, what does Acquisitions Incorporated get in return? From this point forward, Acquisitions Incorporated gets 10% of the party's loot. So for the characters in our adventure, that seemed like a fair trade. One thing to talk about is the guild structure of Acquisitions Incorporated. There are levels of franchisement. Our intrepid adventurers joined the copper level of franchises, effectively some sub contractors. They are part of Acquisitions Incorporated, but only really in the most loose sense. Of course, there are gold franchisees and platinum franchisees within Acquisitions Incorporated, but our adventurers wanted the flexibility, so they decided to stay at the copper level from this point forward. Now, some admin notes for our next episode that everyone is going to level up. Welcome to level 3. This is important because many of our characters will get to pick archetypes, much more specialized versions of themselves moving forward. Our second admin note is that our next game session will be a virtual game session. I am recording this in mid-March, just as the coronavirus grips the United States. We are looking at and experimenting with virtual tabletops, I think, in particular Discord. So we're going to try and play online so we can keep our distance from one another and continue to have some kind of outlet for entertainment as the virus continues to cause problems throughout the country. But plot notes, where will the plot go next? Once the party had finished up this negotiation, they decided to do that third task still. They wanted to complete the job of patrolling the woods to the east for a few more coins, and they did have to wait a week for that shield to be manufactured. But then they had planned to set out west towards the town of Oxenhill off to the west. The reason they were hired to go to Oxenhill was that Oxenhill is on the border with the Clax Empire. And there's conflict simmering between the Dual Duchy and the Clax Empire, and that was part of what Acquisitions Incorporated wanted to hire our adventurers to be a part of. And their new business partners out in the West await them for their first of what may be many adventures with a new benefactor. And that ends this campaign diary.